Hi, this is Lauren O'Callaghan, Entertainment Editor for GamesRadar Plus, and I'm here joined by Total Film Magazine's news editor, Jordan Varley, to talk about the big questions we have after watching Blade Runner 2049.
Hello, and just to warn you, massive spoilers ahead, so if you haven't seen Blade Runner 2049, do not watch any further.
So let's dive right in. First big question, how are the new replicants made to obey?
I guess this is sort of outlined in one of the prequel shorts, Blade Runner 2036, where we see Jared Leto's Neander Wallace kind of demonstrate just how loyal his new line of replicants are when he gets one to commit suicide in front of everyone.
Yeah, that'll do it.
Yeah. So somehow he has overridden the ability that the Nexus 6 replicants had in the original Blade Runner to just kind of disobey commands and just do whatever they want, basically. Although this is sort of challenged by 2049 in the idea that, you know, Love and Kay both have the ability to lie and both have the ability to kill people. Right,
yeah, exactly. So then he never really explains in massive amounts of detail how he's made these replicants obey when the former couldn't. But it is a big point that they can.
Yeah.
But like you've just said, we see examples where they don't. So I feel like this needs a little bit more explanation. Like, you know, it's a major plot point for the movie that they're supposedly so trustworthy that they can let them be Blade Runners and go after their own kind, and yet we don't really find out how he's managed to create this new breed of replicant.
I mean the whole basis of this new society is built on the fact that these replicants will not just go around killing people, that they are entirely loyal and entirely will obey the law no matter what.
Yeah, and it clearly doesn't work, so we could potentially be seeing a new ban come in place after this movie.
Exactly.
Yeah. So the other thing we were talking about was why does he want his replicants to be able to reproduce? Because that seems like quite a dangerous move to me.
Yeah.
Because obviously once they can reproduce, there then becomes a bigger question about whether they can be slaves, whether they can be the property of humans. So if anything, I would have thought Wallace wouldn't want them to have that ability.
Yeah, well, he'd go out of business if they can reproduce. Yeah. I mean, the vague explanation that he gives in the film is that he wants humanity to go to the stars. He talks about having only taken over 9 worlds, and he feels that they should, you know, have colonized the entire universe at this point. And he feels that the only way they're going to do that is if he has enough replicants to effectively live everywhere, go everywhere in the universe. And the only way he believes he can do this, because he can't produce enough in the way that he traditionally has, you know, on a factory assembly line or out of those weird kind of plastic packets that replicants seem to fall from in the ceiling, is by them reproducing. Which seems like a strange way to go about it, but it's the only logical way that he can see.
I just think he's so arrogant that it's not even occurred to him that if he lets his replicants reproduce, there might be another rebellion.
Yeah.
That's just how arrogant he is.
I think you're probably right. Like, I don't know. Or maybe, this could go back to the original question, he's got something within replicants that allows him to control them, or there's some element in them which...
Well, then he needs to explain that. He needs to explain that in the movie. Okay, third big question. How was Deckard able to elude the authorities for so many years between these movies? Like, how did they not catch him?
I guess 2 reasons. One, he's a very good Blade Runner, so he could have, eluded the authorities because he's well trained. And the second reason is because of the blackout, which we learned happened in 2022 or around then.
Yeah, I think that's right. Yeah.
Which basically effectively just got rid of all records in the world. Effectively a massive EMP that's erased all hard drives and all data. So the only data that's left is paper data and fragments that survived. So there was basically no way to track him after that.
Yeah, it's really handy, that blackout.
It really was.
To be honest, I think you're probably right. He's just been quite lucky. He's got the skills. The blackout's really, really helpful. So yeah, people weren't doing their job properly and they came to regret it.
Yeah, they really weren't.
Yeah.
And maybe just the standards slipped in terms of Blade Runners. Like maybe they were just really bad after that and they just couldn't find him.
Yeah, true. So one of the big questions we had after we watched this was, how did Officer K get one of Anna's memories? Because obviously that was what led him to believe that he was the child of Deckard and Rachel, and it's quite a big point of the movie. But as we find out, it's not a true memory of his; it's Anna's. So how did he get it?
Yeah, well, Anna Stelline is a memory maker who creates memories that are implanted into replicants to make them more human. The fact that it keeps them stable, basically. That's the reason why that they don't just freak out and realize that they're artificial and not human. And she says at one point in the film about the reason why she's such a good memory maker and the reason why she's so in demand is because she puts elements of her own memories into replicants, and this is why she's so convincing, why her memories feel so real. So the idea is that she's effectively been putting fragments or entire memories of her own into replicants because that's just part of her MO, that's the way she operates. So either it's a complete coincidence that she's put this particular memory into Kay, Blade Runner who goes on to investigate a case involving her father and mother, or she's put this memory, this specific memory of her as a child in this orphanage, the Morocco orphanage, hiding her wooden horse, into a whole line of replicants. So there may be, dozens, if not hundreds of replicants running around with this specific memory in their head.
Yeah, because she wouldn't have known the dangers of doing that because she didn't know her true identity.
Yeah.
So it seems likely that, she's trapped in this place supposedly because of her immune system, but perhaps she wants her memories to be out there, so she's put them into a line of replicants.
Yeah, it's possible. I guess this leads to another question, is the fact that we don't know if Anna Stelline is aware of who she is.
Yeah, we don't. I got the impression she wasn't, but we actually don't know that for sure in the movie.
She certainly doesn't recognise Deckard at the end of the film. When he walks in and sees her, she seems blank. She doesn't know.
But he said himself that actually he never met his child because that was part of the plan for him to leave, and then the records got lost because of the blackout. So even if she knows who she is, there's no reason why she would recognise him.
Yeah, unless she was given a photo of him or told about him by the replicant rebellion.
Yeah. The other thing I was wondering was if actually the memory had been implanted in Kay as a decoy. Because obviously when he finds out that he isn't the child of Deckard and Rachel, the replicant who hid her originally, she actually says, you thought it was you because of the record of the boy in the orphanage as well.
Yeah.
And she was like, well, that was just part of the story. Like, that was part of the plan to hide her. And that made me wonder whether, having her memories implanted in presumably a number of replicants was part of the plan as well. So if anyone ever went looking for her, they could potentially be led astray and confused somewhat by this.
Yeah, I mean, it's possible. They say at one point that Deckard showed them how to cover their tracks, and part of that could be, setting up several replicants as potential children in this case, and someone obviously went back to that orphanage after and tore the pages out of that book, which have all the records of Anna or the replicant human child.
You can't say they didn't do the job well.
Yeah, exactly. They really covered their tracks.
They really did. They really did. It's a shame for Kay though, and for presumably some other replicant children out there to kind of be given this idea of hope of yes, and then to have it taken away. But
exactly, they think they're real boys, and then they're not.
They're not. So the final question we're going to be talking about really is the biggie. It's the question we've all been asking ourselves ever since the original Blade Runner movie came out. And if you were hoping the sequel was going to answer the question over whether Deckard is replicant or human, I don't know. I'm not sure. What do you think?
Well, I believe that he is a replicant quite strongly. And
really?
And I've believed that since the original Blade Runner.
Okay.
Partly because the origami unicorn just seems irrefutable to me as a piece of evidence. And it's partly because of that, and partly because I believe that. I think that this film confirms that for a few key reasons.
Okay, lay them out for me.
My first reason, Deckard lives alone in Las Vegas, where at some point in the past, a dirty bomb was exploded, detonated. So that whole area is irradiated. We see in the film that radiation levels are nominal at the point that Kay finds Deckard there, but the fact remains that is some kind of horrible irradiated wasteland where presumably humans would not be able to live, and humans do not live, which sort of leads me to believe that maybe if Deckard is a replicant, he would be able to survive there. So that's one reason. The second reason, in the meeting with Neander Wallace, between Deckard and Neander Wallace, Wallace leans quite heavily on the fact that Deckard could have been created by Tyrell to basically impregnate Rachel. So Tyrell created Rachel to be able to give birth, and he either created Rachel to be able to give birth with any human, or he created a specific replicant kind of breed or race that can, procreate together, in which case Deckard is a replicant. And also there's a very subtle reason why I think he's a replicant as well, that I think this film hints at, is because earlier in the film there's a moment where Ryan Gosling's Officer K learns that the memory in his head is real, and he reacts to this by saying something on the lines of, "I know it's real," and having an emotional breakdown. And later in the film, when Wallace is speaking to Deckard says something along the lines of, "I know it's real." He has almost exactly the same reaction that Kay has to learning of his own memories. So I think that's a very clear kind of connection between those two moments that implies that they're both replicants. But maybe I'm reading too much into it. But
no, I think you made quite a compelling argument for it there. Interestingly, I've always assumed that he's human. But that's just more from personally, that's how I've seen his story in the original movie, rather than the hard fact-checking evidence you've just presented. But the thing that's I find interesting about the movie is that the story works either way. Whether he's human or replicant, his child with Rachel would need to have been hidden and would be in danger from dissection and this sort of thing. And I think so the question really is, does it matter? And I think when Kay asks him whether the dog that he lives with is real or not, and he says, "I don't know," it's very much talking about himself as well. Like, I don't know, but I don't care. Like, it doesn't matter. Do we need to have an answer to this question? Not
really. I mean, that's one of the miracles of the film, is that at the end of the film, you don't care. Like, there are such bigger fish to fry in this film. Like, Villeneuve tackles such bigger themes and ideas, and ultimately, it almost doesn't matter that Deckard's there. Like, this is such Kay's story, and the story of that world and the state it's in now, that Deckard is just one small part of it.
Yeah, and it really is, I think, a story about replicants and the fact that it really doesn't matter if they're made or born. They have memories, they have experiences, they have feelings. Like, they have these stories that we find so compelling and so interesting. And so at the end of the day, the question over whether they're real or not isn't the most important one.
Yeah. Well, that's one of the great things about it. I mean, the central relationship in this film is between a replicant and a hologram.
Yeah. And yet it's so human.
Exactly. Yeah.
So those are the big questions we had after watching Blade Runner 2049. Let us know what you thought about them in the comments below. And for more movie news, reviews and features, make sure you subscribe to GamesRadar Plus.